In 1901, Annie Edson Taylor, a 63-year-old schoolteacher, became the first person to go over Niagara Falls in New York in a barrel, a stunt she had hoped would solve her financial problems. It didn't. The explanations for why one might want to throw oneself off a waterfall range from the allure of glory and the promise of wealth, to an escape from desperation. Sometimes this kind of extreme risk-taking is attributed to a simpler, purer explanation: passion. That is how Dane Jackson, a 26-year-old national kayaking champion from Tennessee, explains his obsession with kayaking. Salto del Mal, a 134-foot waterfall located in Valle de los Condotes, a volcanic region of central Chile. "It's been a dream of mine for 5 years," Jackson said. "I think it's just one of the most photogenic waterfalls I've ever seen. And it's also quite tall." The record for the tallest waterfall ever run in a kayak is held by Tyler Bratt for Palouse Falls, a 189-foot waterfall in Washington. Only a handful of kayakers have ever tried their luck at running anything over 100 feet. With Salto del Mal, Jackson has now completed 6 waterfalls that are at least 100 feet. Jackson first saw a photograph of Salto del Mal in 2016. He was under the impression that its location was simply too remote. A recently constructed roadway changed the calculus for Jackson, and when a Chilean friend contacted him to let him know the waterfall was running and now mere minutes from a road, he immediately made plans. On February 5, Jackson completed the first known descent of Salto del Mal. When he landed, however, he came out of his kayak, the equivalent of a yellow card in the kayaking world, not necessarily disqualifying to his claim of a first descent, but also not perfect in execution. Jackson and his team, which included at least one other world-class kayaker who was there to spot Jackson's descent, as well as a film crew to capture video, avoided revealing certain details to Jackson so as not to influence his decision-making process. For example, the team didn't conduct an official measurement of the waterfall's height until after Jackson's descent. Using ropes, they calculated the waterfall's height to be, conservatively, 134 feet, making it the second tallest waterfall ever run in a kayak. They also didn't tell Jackson that it might be the last month Salto del Mal would run in its current state. A major hydroelectric project just upstream is set to permanently redirect the Mal River through a different valley, turning the dam-controlled yet high-volume waterfall into a mere dribble. Jackson has been kayaking since he was 2. His father, Eric Jackson, known as EJ, is also a national kayaking champion and the founder of Jackson Kayaks, a kayak manufacturer. EJ and his wife, Kristen, raised Dane and his sister, Emily, in an RV, homeschooled them and spent countless days paddling rivers. Both EJ and Dane suffer from severe hearing difficulties that require them to wear hearing aids. "There are no disadvantages to being deaf in kayaking," Dane said. "There's an advantage because I can read lips from across the river, which is helpful if you're trying to get information on something that's coming up." Jackson still lives in an RV. He spoke with the writer Andrew Bisharat last week about his Chilean adventure. "What is it like to go over a waterfall of this size? I've been wanting to do this waterfall for so long that I was nervous, really scared above it, but I have been wanting to experience it for the last 5 years. The view was super wild, with desert and cliffs everywhere, and more waterfalls downstream. It's a very high-volume river, with a lot of power. More than anything, I was focused on what my kayak was doing. The first 10 to 20 feet are the most important and decide your outcome. The goal is to get your kayak as vertical as possible, because that's the safest and softest way to land. I got pretty splashed in the face and it was a whiteout, but I had enough feeling that I was in control. I felt a little bit of, okay, I'm still falling. And it was still another half second before I hit. How hard was the impact? I was planning to have potentially one of the biggest hits of my life, but for whatever reason, I had a super soft hit. Barely felt it. Why did you come out of your kayak? It happened pretty fast, but when I hit, the skirt of my kayak came off, and the boat filled up with water, and I went super deep. That's not always the end of the world, and a lot of times you can stay in your boat and be fine. But this time, the boat just got pulled away from me. What does this descent mean, knowing that this waterfall may no longer exist soon? To know that this drop might be gone very soon, it's really unfortunate. It's an incredible waterfall. And I don't see the point of putting it elsewhere. I know there is at a Shanghai advertising company, returned to Wuhan, her hometown, for the holidays on January 21 and had a high-speed train ticket back to Shanghai on February 2. But her ticket was cancelled soon after Wuhan was locked down, and she has tried and failed repeatedly since then to find a way out. There is no point to keep looking, she said. Shipyards around the country have run into labor shortages, said Tim Huxley, the chief executive of Mandarin Shipping, a Hong Kong freighter shipping company. Shipbuilders and ship repair providers have begun citing these labor shortages to invoke clauses in their contracts that allow them to delay completion of projects for events beyond their control, he said. Aside from fear of disease, the country's nearly 300 million migrant workers, almost 2/5 of the labor force, now have another reason to be reluctant to travel to distant cities. Their children are still home. Depending on the province, many schools are not scheduled to resume until February 25 or even March 1. Even factories with enough workers are running into further problems. The packaging industry is almost shut down, so everything from plastic packing to steel drums is running out, Mr. Wood said. Local regulators are putting up even more barriers. Before businesses in big manufactured volunteer fire department west of the Mississippi. With the demise of gold mining and the shuttering of the sawmills that were once an economic engine for the region, Downieville reinvented itself as a destination for mountain biking and fly fishing, with an abundance of Old West charm. Residents reacted to Mr. Butz's last-minute purchase of the paper with a mixture of relief and gratitude. A real sense of relief, said Lee Adams, a former Sierra County sheriff and a current hostility and boycott threats. Amazon pulled the book. Deborah Caldwell Stone, director of the American Library Association's Office for Intellectual Freedom, said Amazon has the same First Amendment right as any retailer. Amazon has a First Amendment right to pick and choose the materials they offer, she said. Despite its size, it does not have to sponsor speech it finds unacceptable. Physical bookstores rarely stock supremacist literature, for no other reason than it would alienate many customers. The question is whether Amazon, because of its size and power, should behave differently. I am not going to argue for the wider distribution of Nazi material, said Danny Kane of the Raven Bookstore in Lawrence, Kansas, who is the author of a critical pamphlet, How to Resist Amazon and Why, but I still don't trust Amazon to be the arbiters of free speech. What if Amazon decided to pull books representing a less despicable political viewpoint? Or books critical of Amazona's practices, Amazona's newfound zeal to remove the Uglia extends beyond the Nazis. The order page for the e-book of the Nation of Islam's The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews stated last week, this title not currently available for purchase. The Man in the High Castle was based on a 1962 novel of the same name by Philip K. Dick, whose stories are often about the slippery nature of reality and how it will be controlled in the future by governments and corporations. One character in the streaming series was Mr. Rockwell, the American Nazi Party founder. In photos in Creating the Alt-World, the tribute book, the swastika around Mr. Rockwell's neck was removed. The real-life Mr. Rockwell has been largely removed from Amazona's bookstore as well. After a complaint by a member of Congress in 2018, a Children's book that Mr. Rockwell wrote disappeared from Amazon. So did his book White Power. Other Rockwell material, like the Stormtrooper magazine, is described as currently unavailable. Some sellers circumvent the blocks by listing titles with a word or two changed, other booksellers said. One seller said he recently received a message from Amazon that several titles by Savitri Devi, also known as a Hitler's priestess, were forbidden. But they are now on the site. And a copy of A Toward the White Republica recently popped up on Amazon, for $973 plus postage. There is still an abundance of other Nazi material available on Amazon, much of it with favorable reviews. There is the ASS Leadership Guide, many editions of Hitler's Mein Kampf and Joseph Goebbels' Nature and Form of National Socialism, to name just a few. That only underlines how hard it can be to tell exactly what Amazon's rules are. The confusion is reinforced by Abe Books, the biggest second-hand book platform outside of Amazon itself. Some of the books dropped from Amazon are available on Abe. Recently, there were 18 copies of Mr. Dukia's books on Abe, at prices up to $150. Amazon, which owns Abe, declined to comment.